Hussain, Assistant Research Associate here at the Islamabad Policy Research Institute. It is excellent that we have an array of different speakers with expertise that can actually shed light on the topic. The topic for today is the Indo-Pacific Visions for Europe and Pakistan. So before we commence proceedings, it is extremely important to try and introduce this session. And this is also the first joint webinar between the two think tanks as well. So we would start with the welcome remarks from the president of the Islamabad Policy Research Institute, Ambassador Dr. Raza Mohammed. Ambassador Dr. Raza Mohammed is the president of the Islamabad Policy Research Institute. He has held various prestigious command and staff assignments. He also served as the additional secretary in the Ministry of Defense Production. After retirement, he was appointed as the ambassador of Pakistan to Mauritius, Madagascar, Seychelles, and Comoros. He has been the executive director in services in the Army Welfare Trust and advisor to the president of the National Defense University, Islamabad. He has also served in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, attended the staff course in Germany and peacekeeping course for the decision makers in the United States. He's been on the faculty of premier military institutions such as the Pakistan Military Academy in Kabul, the Command and Staff College Quetta, and the NDU. He is now President IPRI. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Hamza. And sorry, I have a little bad throat, but I think I'll be able to communicate. First of all, I take this opportunity to very warmly welcome you all and thank actually the CASA, the Director General CASA Asia, Mr. Parondo, the sorry, Ambassador Miguel, and also Ms. Martin. She will be joining us for the talk. And on Pakistani side, it will be the Director of Research, Mr. Dr. Rashid Wali Janjua, and our Senior Research Fellow, Ambassador Durrani. Other than that, all those who are here, who have logged in from Pakistan and from Spain, a very, very warm welcome to you all. We are very grateful to CASA for accepting this invitation and holding this first webinar amongst us. If we proceed further, and if we think that we can collaborate, which I think we will conclude ultimately, that we can conclude in many things, in various research products and research programs, and we can share knowledge from our perspective, from the South Asian and Asian perspective, whereas we can benefit from CASA, that is from the European perspective and Western perspective, also on not only on the Indo-Pacific, but other things as well, which we can actually decide to go forward with. As far as Indo-Pacific is concerned and Indo-Pacific vision from Europe and Pakistan, that is today's topic, I think it is a very well-chosen topic and very useful too. Surely this we will benefit from your point of view and will like you to hear our point of view as well. Indo-Pacific space, it has become in last few years a space of strategic contestation in the backdrop of the global rivalry, which is going on. Few people call it rivalry, few people call it global competition or so on. But primarily it is the United States of America and China, which are seen now, and especially after the new security strategy, which was issued by the United States of America and the Biden administration, that China is seen as its major rival, actually, and Russia so. So this situation has been exacerbated by the Ukraine attack on Ukraine, or the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So Europe is going through a great problem. Reorientation is being done. Some new alliances are taking place. Some old alliances are being rejuvenated and all that. But primarily we understand that Europe is going through difficult time. And it is not only Europe, it is Pakistan as well. When it came to Russian invasion of Ukraine, Pakistan is also affected. Pakistan is one of those countries which dependent upon the food grains and gas and oil from Russian side. So we are affected also in a way. But fortunately, Pakistan is not part of any military alliance as such, neither on one side, neither on eastern side, nor on western side, because of our own issues. We live in South Asia. South Asia has a very, very typical situation going on. We are surrounded by Iran, we are surrounded by Afghanistan. We have major neighbor as India, which borders us, the major part of the Pakistan is bordered with India, and some part with China also. China has been Pakistan's long-term ally and supporter in various things, in strategic domain, in economic domain, and all that. But we have a prevailing and continuing kind of contestation, rivalry with India. Although one tries to resolve all these issues, and there have been attempts to resolve the issues with India, but still we are grappling with the negotiations possibility and the way forward we would like to see. However, simply spoken, Pakistan itself has lots of problems. It is economical spheres, social, it is the political sphere, diplomatic, and so many other issues. We have security issues also. We are one of those countries which are affected the most by Afghanistan, war in Afghanistan. Firstly, the Soviet invasion, in which we became the partner of United States and other Western allies and stood against the Soviet invasion, and ultimately Soviet Union withdrew. Later on, after the 9/11, it was the coalition forces, the United States and the partner, the West, we sided with against the regime in Afghanistan. But in these 40 years, 43 years, Pakistan has been affected the most. I think the speakers will go into more of details that it has been financial loss, it has been security and social society's breakup loss, I would say. Our society is now ridden with the various issues, including the militancy, which is being supported by some of the countries from outside. So we are going through a typical situation, and in that situation, we find ourselves good being non-aligned, being neutral, being the ones who would not like to join any of the camps and would try to bring peace here and would wish the peace between the global contesting powers as well. With these brief remarks, I hand you over back to Hamza. And once again, all those who have joined now and those who had joined earlier, I'm very, very grateful to you on behalf of IPRI, the Islamabad Policy Research Institute, our team, and on behalf of Pakistan as well, that you are here and we are going to discuss very important things. Thank you so much, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Back to Hamza.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Reza, for your welcome remarks. Now we're going to move to Mr. Javier Parondo for his welcome remarks, who's the Director General of CASA Asia in Spain. Mr. Parondo had graduated in law from the Carlos III University of Madrid. He has a master's degree in constitutional law and political science from the Center for Political and Constitutional Studies. He entered the diplomatic service in 2004, and he has been posted to the Spanish embassies in Afghanistan, Vietnam, and Thailand, also to the Spanish consulate in Jerusalem, and to the permanent representation to the United Nations in Geneva. In Madrid, he has worked in the cabinet of the Secretary of the State for Foreign Affairs and for Latin America, and in the General Subdirectorate for the Middle East. He has also been responsible for the Department of Cooperation with the Arab World and Asia, and also at the Spanish Agency for International Development Cooperation. Since November 2019, he has been the Director General of CASA Asia and the Governor of Spain at the ASEF, which is the Asia-Europe Foundation.
Thank you very much, Hamza, and good morning to you all. Good afternoon for those who are in Pakistan. It is my pleasure to participate in this common activity between CASA Asia and IPRA, Islamabad Policy Research Institute. This is the kind of exchanges that we would like to promote, although in this case, we have no option but to organize it online. I hope we will be able to one day do the same, either in Spain or in Pakistan, so we can meet our Pakistani friends and meet each other in a more in a different environment. CASA Asia, for those of you who are not familiar with the institution, is a public consortium made up of 3 levels of the public administration in Spain. Central level, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs; regional level, the government of Catalonia; And finally, at city council level, the city councils of Barcelona and Madrid. So it's an interesting structure which puts together different administrations and which creates interesting synergies among them. In the past, we have been organizing different seminars on the Indo-Pacific, so this is another step in that direction. I'm very happy to participate, and in that regard, I would like to thank all those people that have made this activity possible, particularly the panelists who will take the floor in a few minutes. As the High Representative for Foreign Policy and Security, Josep Borrell, mentioned a few months ago, the Indo-Pacific it's becoming an increasingly important region for the EU, from trade and investment to connectivity, climate action and security. We have a big stake in the Indo-Pacific, and we should do our part to keep the regional order open and rule-based. So this is our framework, which has been supported by a strategy. For the first time from September 2021, the EU has adopted a strategy for the Indo-Pacific, which shows the commitment of the 27 member states towards the region and the recognition that the global order will have one of its main areas, the global order. In the global order of the 21st century, the Indo-Pacific region is becoming more and more important. This is why we need to identify partners in the region which share our same values and interests. And in that exercise, I think Pakistan plays a major role. Professor Mohammed mentioned that Pakistan has tried not to align with any major alliance, but we share a lot of values, principles with Pakistan. So in that exercise, I think we should find common understanding to deepen the relationship between the EU as a whole and Spain in particular with Pakistan. The crisis in Ukraine has also been mentioned. I think this is the main example of how the rule-based order that the High Representative Josep Borrell mentioned has been broken, and we should do our utmost to re-establish these rules and encourage parties to break a peace deal. Spain is part of the major security alliance, which is NATO, but NATO has focused its attention more and more in the Asia-Pacific region. And that is why we have 4 partners in that space, which are Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and South Korea. So this is another example of how the EU is focusing more and more in the region, and how the Euro-Atlantic scenario is more and more connected with the Indo-Pacific one. Ambassador de Miguel, I'm sure he will refer to how we perceive the region as a whole, but particularly how we want to connect it to one of our main regions of interest, which is Latin America. We should not forget that Latin America has a long Pacific coast, so it is in our interest to try to foster relations between the Asian countries and the Latin American nations which share the same ocean. And APEC and other initiatives go in that direction. The Indo-Pacific scenario is also the playground of the major rivalry between China and the United States. I guess this is also an area that the panelists will refer to. We just wanted to stress that the EU wants to have its own strategy regarding China. We don't want to become a theater of that rivalry, and we will do our utmost not to be influenced by other major partners, but have our own votes. I just wanted to finalize my welcoming remarks by thanking once again IPRI for this initiative, for counting with us. Although we are not purely a think tank, I think we match. We can identify experts who can participate in this kind of exchange of views. So I am very much, I'm really looking forward to hearing what the panelists want to say in this activity. And I hope this will be the first of many others. So thank you very much. And Hamza, back to you.
Thank you so much, sir. It's an absolute pleasure to listen to your welcome remarks, and we completely concur with your views. And we're hopeful that this discussion that we're going to take forward yields in not only fruitful results, but excellent opportunities to try and exchange views. So thank you so much for your welcoming remarks. We'll now go ahead with the discussion session. The topic for today's discussion session, the first one, is the Indo-Pacific visions for Europe, from Europe. And we're going to start with His Excellency Emilio de Miguel. He's an ambassador at large for the Indo-Pacific and director of CASA Asia Center in Madrid. He was also the ambassador at large for the Indo-Pacific and director of the Center for CASA Asia in Madrid, as I rightly mentioned, and ambassador of Spain to Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar. And he was also deputy director for the Pacific, Southeast Asia, and the Philippines as well. Sir, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. As it has been mentioned, the rivalry between US and China is marking the whole politics in the Indo-Pacific. The EU strategy takes that into account, but we want to stress the collaborative aspects of geopolitics more than the rivalry. The EU strategy that was approved in September 21 established that the EU is ready to partner with any country in the region that wants to partner with us. But obviously, this is a graduated partnership. I mean, we are aware with some countries, because of common interests or common values, we can cooperate further than with others. Nevertheless, we are open to all countries, even China, which is a proof of how we don't want to be absorbed, kidnapped by this rivalry between US and China. As you may know, the EU strategy is focusing in 7 priorities. Those are connectivity, economic prosperity. Economic prosperity refers mainly to free trade agreements, an effort to make to fight the trends that go to protectionism. Also, we want to promote supply chains which are more resilient and which are not over-dependent in a single provider. We have another point is green energy, green transition, ocean governance, security and defense. This is a novelty for European Union. For the first time, we say that we want to be an actor in security and defense in the Indo-Pacific. And finally, human security. In human security, especially we pay attention to 2 fields, 2 areas. On one side, public health, and on the other, resilience of societies facing natural disasters provoked by climate change. Now I would like to focus in the Indian Ocean. And something that we have realized recently is that since the beginning in the implementation of the strategy, we have focused especially in the Pacific side and the Straits of Malacca. So I think there is a moment where we should refocus on the Indian Ocean and put more stress in that ocean. In that respect, yesterday I was at a meeting, at a seminar in Stockholm, and this need to rebalance our strategy and our implementation to the Indian Ocean was acutely felt. First, we should work more with our partners in the Indian Ocean. As you know, the EU strategy includes also the eastern coast of Africa. So our first target would be increasing our cooperation in multilateral fora. The two fora we have identified with whom we should work more are IORA and the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium. In the case of IORA, we see the different aspects where IORA is, the different areas where IORA is working. And we think that one where we could have an important role is the fight against IUU fishing. Concerning the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium, also we have seen there are many opportunities to establish a cooperative dialogue with that symposium. As you know, the European Union has started this system of coordinated maritime presences that later I'm going to speak about. The areas where European Union feels could have an added value in the Indian Ocean are maritime security. We have already, since 2008, we have had Operation Atalanta in the Somali coast in the controlling the Straits of Aden. It started as a anti-piracy operation, but along the years, it has evolved and it has broadened its scope. Now, Atalanta is also about fighting against transnational crime, protecting biodiversity, and fighting against IUU fishing. Something that we have realized is that when you start with an operation and start fighting piracy, at the end, you are forced to broaden scope. Maritime security is much more than simply ensuring the control of the maritime routes. Maritime security involves the proper ocean governance, which is one of the priorities of our strategy. Last year, there was in Paris the Indo-Pacific Forum. In this Indo-Pacific Forum, it was declared the first area of maritime interest of European Union, which is the Northwestern Indian Ocean. Precisely this area, it was set based in the experience we have already acquired in Operation Atalanta. Also, in the area of maritime security, we are considering the possibility of extending CRIMARIO 2. CRIMARIO is a program that tries to promote the capabilities of the involved countries to control their maritime routes and the economic exclusive zone. So we are thinking of extending CRIMARIO also to the Indian Ocean. A second area of interest is public health. We feel that in the Indian Ocean, especially in the eastern part of Africa, there are many more resources should be devoted to public health. In that respect, the resources we think we should devote are first to creating human capabilities and also in primary attention. A third area where we think we can have a value is connectivity. Since 2013, the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, has promoted many projects in Africa. After 10 years, we have noticed in some of the cases, some problems have appeared with concerning the debts and concerning in some cases that maybe the projects were not properly planned and were not answering to the real needs of the populations. The European Union launched end of 2021 the Global Gateway. The Global Gateway wants to finance infrastructure projects in the whole world. In that respect, last March, some Global Gateway projects were approved by European Union, and several of them concern Africa. In Africa specifically, we intend working in transport and energy, where we think that the needs of the Asian continent are very strong. Now, I would like to mention the Spanish presidency, 3 activities that we want to hold. First, concerning ASEF. We give a lot of importance to ASEF. We value very much the mutual understanding between civil societies that ASEF has promoted in the 25 years of existence it has. So in July, we will organize in Barcelona the Board of Governors of ASEF. There will be a sideline event. Still, we are discussing the topic. It could be about startups. Then in September in Salamanca, we will organize the ASEF Young Leaders. In the ASEF Young Leaders is part, we really, we want to bet for those who both in Europe and Asia will be the leaders of tomorrow. Precisely in the seminar I was attending in Stockholm, I was speaking with a young expert that he remembered he participated in the ASEF Young Leaders that we organized in 2019. And it rejoiced me as it proves that ASEF Young Leaders has consequences. The third one is we want with Casa de America, another public diplomacy institution, to organize a seminar about Latin America and the Indo-Pacific. As DG Javier Parrondo mentioned, Latin America has been the big forgotten continent in the different strategies for the Indo-Pacific. The EU strategy for the Indo-Pacific goes from the eastern coast of Africa till the Pacific. It doesn't include the Pacific coast of the Americas. And something similar happens with other strategies. So our target, it would be an experts meeting, would be what's in the Indo-Pacific for Latin America. It would be mainly an EU approach. Which of the 7 priorities of the EU strategy could be of interest for Latin America, and how we could collaborate more closely in the Indo-Pacific, the European Union, and Latin America. And well, that's all. And I expect to have given some food for thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, His Excellency Amelia de Miguel Calabria, for giving us this insight. It is absolutely important to understand the European perspective on connectivity and overall when we talk about the Indo-Pacific as a region. So our second speaker, who is going to be talking about the Indo-Pacific and visions from Europe, is Ms. Irene Martinez. She's a researcher in international relations and geoeconomics. She currently holds the position of senior lecturer at Blanquerna University in Barcelona, and she's also a guest lecturer at the NATO Defense College in Rome. During her professional career, she has been a lecturer at the IBA University in Karachi and the executive coordinator of the Brussels office of Real Instituto Elcano. She has been a researcher in several think tanks in Europe and Asia, and is also a regular contributor in media outlets and in international congresses. Her last two recent publications are being published in 2 books in the month of April 2023. Ms. Irene, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you very much. Good morning or good afternoon. Thank you first for the opportunity to be talking in this webinar, especially from the European perspective. I think sometimes Europe is seen as merely a follower, especially regarding Indo-Pacific. It's seen as a group of countries that are still struggling to find its own vision or its own strategy in regards to Indo-Pacific. And the reality is that it's pretty much so. It's still the reality today in Europe, right? So I would like to start talking a little bit of the historical view of Europe in regards with Indo-Pacific, right? So for Europe, it actually took around, we just moved into the Indo-Pacific narrative for the last 4 years, right? Before that, we still called it Asia-Pacific. The new Indo-Pacific narrative came merely because of 2 countries that pushed for this new conception, were Germany and France. Without these 2 countries, the rest of European countries would have still called Asia-Pacific because they found it that it's a term, it's a word that was much softer and easier to navigate with. So that gives you already an idea of how comprehensive is our vision on Indo-Pacific, right? Also, for the longest time, for Europe, Indo-Pacific was merely a way to develop economic opportunities. So we saw Indo-Pacific as a way to improve trade, to look for new partners, but it was a very, very transactional relationship that we had with the Indo-Pacific. Of course, different countries had different levels of integration, but in general, we had a very narrow view on the Indo-Pacific. This has been changing in the last year, especially as it was mentioned before, that we have the new strategy regarding Indo-Pacific. And in this strategy, finally, European countries have actually realized that we have many other issues that are of much interest and that are very strategic for both regions, right? This has helped as well frame the relationship of the European countries vis-a-vis Asian countries, one-on-one. And why do I say so? Because Europe has a lot of smaller states that they did not actually have a vision on their own regarding Indo-Pacific. They just followed what the bigger states of Europe were saying. So this was easier for them in order to basically navigate the complexities of such a vast continent, right? This has been changing. Interests have become wider, and they realize that there's a lot of areas where both regions can actually profit from. And one of these newcomers is actually the Netherlands. So we can actually now say clearly that there are 3 countries in the European Union that are leading the way towards Indo-Pacific. These are France, Germany, and the Netherlands for different reasons. But the 3 of them are pushing for the agenda inside of the European Union. Then we have other countries, especially Western countries, such as Italy and Spain, that realize that the Indo-Pacific strategy is a way to actually have foreign policy independence. So it's seen as the strategic autonomy of Europe. However, we have an opposing view from the Eastern Bloc in Europe, where they actually see the Indo-Pacific as a way to get closer to the US. So these views are extremely clear. They're very open, and they are trying to navigate these views in order to have a common strategy. So the common strategy has focused mainly on the areas where we understand that we are integrated enough in order to work together in some issues. And I would like to mention some of these areas, which I think they will be very familiar to you. One of them is probably with a different type of view, but to us, the risk of emerging technologies has become extremely relevant for Europe. The supply chain resilience, disinformation, growing tensions and assertiveness by some Asian states. So these would be the main characteristics of the European vision regarding Indo-Pacific. Now, this disparity of views on how to actually approach the Indo-Pacific is just a reflection of the ambivalence of Europe in regards with international affairs. So until very recently, Europe thought that Indo-Pacific was very far, that Europe had to be focused on European affairs or its neighbors, and it wasn't giving the importance in regards with the weight of Asia in terms of economic and demographic power in the world, right? This has been changing, fortunately. And now one of these areas of interest that it was also mentioned before, and I think it's double interest because it's on one side from Europe, but also on the other side from Spain, is actually the maritime security area. And this is actually more than considering the water just a passage for commercial vessels. It's actually talking about freedom of navigation, exclusive economic zones in the area. And one very important thing is actually data traffic through undersea cables. This is extremely, extremely relevant because we are seeing issues right here in the Mediterranean with this, with the data traffic undersea water cables. So for us, this will be a very interesting area of collaboration and understanding how these networks are actually expanding in the Indo-Pacific. And the last one would be ocean biodiversity. So marine biodiversity will be also a very important area for us. Spain being a very maritime country and with a lot of fisheries and caring about the seas, one of the priority areas from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Spain is also related to sustainability of the seas and everything related to support for policies regarding biodiversity. Then I would like to move into how do we actually navigate throughout the different conceptions of Asia in the Pacific. So first, the EU countries actually rely a lot on countries that are outside of Europe but have an experience in working with Asia. So in there, we can clearly see that the UK is a very important partner for the European Union in terms of Indo-Pacific. We hold consultations in a regular basis about Indo-Pacific matters, and it is also because even though they're not part of the European Union anymore, we understand that they are going to be a partner for us in the future. The other partner, of course, would be the US. There are some countries that, of course, see the US as an important partner in the Pacific. As I said, multiplicity of views inside of the European Union. Some others believe that the US shouldn't be actually meddling in Indo-Pacific matters. And the last one is actually Australia. Australia is also a country with whom, for example, France or Germany have very close ties. They also consult each other. And of course, European countries are interested in joining platforms where they could actually have a closer access to the to Indo-Pacific area. So in the end, we always have two levels. We have the European Union level, but we also have a national level. Some European countries, they will be much more assertive, much more focused on Indo-Pacific in the near future. Some others will not be because it's not their area of interest, especially Eastern Bloc, besides actually Lithuania and the Czech Republic, who are pretty much interested in the Pacific. And lastly, of course, another very interesting point for us would be managing our relationship with China. So China is the elephant in the room. I mentioned Indo-Pacific as a big block, but inside of these big blocks, we have different players, right? So for us, the relationship with China is actually very difficult to label. We have been constantly changing the label of what are we with China? Are we strategic rivals? Are we competitors? Are we allies? Well, we never were allies, but we try to create some sort of alliance with China. Today, we have different national views on our relationship with China. You will see some countries are very assertive and they have been extremely clear on the relationship vis-a-vis with China. The European Union is actually considering China right now a strategic rival, but is not willing to move into decoupling with China. So far, we're still looking for areas of common interest that we can work together. And we believe that in the near future, China will be able to sit down and listen to the demands that the European Union has in order for Indo-Pacific to have a prosperous future. The other area of interest for the European Union is because we actually believe in platforms where we actually have a multiplicity of partnerships. We like, especially ASEAN. ASEAN has been a very good partner for the European Union. It's a very easy platform for us to communicate with a lot of countries in the Indo-Pacific. And in compared to China, who prefers actually to go vis-a-vis countries, we believe that ASEAN, or creating more platforms, helps all these countries have a voice to the European Union, and we can actually together build a common strategy for the region. So I think I will stop here. I think we're pretty much on time, and I don't know if Q&As is now, but thank you so much, and I hope we continue with the discussion in some minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Irene, for your enlightening remarks, and we look forward to the Q&A session as well, where quite a few participants who are online and elsewhere will be posing questions to you regarding the subject. We're now going to go to the Islamabad, our own think tanks experts, and first in line is Brigadier Retired Dr. Rashid Wali Janjua. He will be speaking on the Indo-Pacific vision from Pakistan's viewpoint by giving a security perspective. And this is obviously his remarks are going to be part of this session. Just a brief bio of Brigadier Dr. Rashid Wali Janjua. He holds a PhD degree from NUST and is a graduate of Military College of Engineering Command and Staff College, Quetta, as well as the NDU in Islamabad. He also holds a Master's of Arts in Security and Defense Management from the Royal Military College in Kingston. He has served in various prestigious command, staff, and instructional assignments during his service tenure. After his retirement, he served as Director of Planning and Development in the Fauji Group of Companies. He has been serving as Director of Research at our think tank since 2020. And he's also a regular contributor to national dailies and research publications on national and international security, international relations, energy, politics, and governance issues. Brigadier Rashid, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Hamza. I wish to thank CASA Asia, the DG, and the staff for having afforded me an opportunity to discuss a subject which is very important. So, Indo-Pacific vision, we have heard from our European counterparts, and what I am going to present in the next 20 minutes is a security perspective premised upon geopolitical and security dynamics of the region. I'll not delve too much into the foreign relations part, because that is an aspect that would be covered by our very able speaker, Ambassador Durrani. And I'll not go into the specifics of the historical context, but sufficient details would be covered which frame the issue in the proper context. Indo-Pacific strategy and Indo-Pacific vision that we talk about is a product of thought process that factored in the big power rivalry and competing alliances to contain the geopolitical and economic ascendancy of rival global powers. Before understanding the perspective of countries like Pakistan, it is appropriate to have an understanding of the geopolitical environment and security compulsions that impact the regional security dynamics of South Asia. We shall therefore briefly dwell upon security and geopolitical environment before discussing the specifics of Indo-Pacific vision and its concomitant alliances. The discourse would be rounded off by giving a brief perspective of Pakistan's security concerns vis-a-vis Indo-Pacific version of USA and its allies. Now, coming over to security and geopolitical environment that prevails in South Asia. The global power competition, as it is impacting the rest of the world, is impacting the regional integration in South Asia, and it is doing it in a very adverse manner. According to a World Bank report, South Asia, with a paltry intra-regional trade of 6%, is the least integrated region in the world compared to Europe's 60% and East Asia's 35% integration. According to the same source, the potential of Indo-Pakistan trade can rise easily from $3 billion to $20 billion, provided the geopolitics is kept aside. The geopolitics, unfortunately, has not loosened its vice-like grip over South Asian regional politics. The competing alliances like Quad and AUKUS, under the overarching concept of US-led Indo-Pacific vision, cast their competitive shadow over regional connectivity and partnerships in South Asia. The competitive spirit of the Indo-Pacific alliance and the US-China competition is also casting a negative pall over Pakistan's economic alliances like China-Pakistan Economic Corridor with China. A corridor of economic prosperity, that is CPEC, is viewed as a challenge by the West and its allies, including India, which prevents its linkage with East-West corridor, linking South Asia with Central Asia, which is one of the dreams that we have for our regional connectivity and economic prosperity. The unstable security situation in Afghanistan in our neighborhood is also a potential destabilizer for South Asia. The international community needs to help Afghanistan get economically stable, without which the Taliban regime would remain weak, leading to empowerment of terrorist entities like ISK and Al-Qaeda in the region. A negative peace in Afghanistan and the episodic relapses in violence is keeping the region destabilized, besides prevention of the economic integration of South Asia with Central and West Asia, as already alluded. Now, I come to the Indo-Pacific vision. Before coming over to this vision from which flow the strategies and subordinate multinational alliances, I need to dwell a little on the historical evolution of this vision. This Indo-Pacific vision is viewed in Pakistan as a derivative of global power competition, wherein economic and geopolitical competition between USA and China has started manifesting itself in the shape of competing alliances. Western Pacific and Indian Oceans have been combined to envision a competitive alliance arena, ostensibly to contain the rise of China. China, which had started its global outreach through its Belt and Road Initiative, spanning several continents and connecting 60 countries. The several strands of BRI offered economic partnerships to South Asian and ASEAN region countries. It was a regional and global outreach model premised upon trade, connectivity, and economic integration. China also facilitated competing paradigm through economic alliances like Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership comprising 15 countries that included 11 countries. Those were members of another regional trading group, that is Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, known by its acronym CPTPP. The United States also offered economic alliances to promote trade and investment partnerships in the region in the shape of Asia-Pacific Alliance, comprising 21 countries, and then its Trans-Pacific variant known as TPP, comprising 9 economies. The TPP was supposed to promote free trade between the APEC economies, but later, due to lack of interest by Trump administration, the initiative fizzled out. The Obama administration, which had come up with the rebalance to Asia and pivot to Asia strategy, outlining its vision in 2017 NSS, sought to strengthen the security alliances with the Southeast Asian countries. This rebalance, however, was not as effective as USA's attention was riveted on Middle East and Europe, which showed insecurity, which showed in its security and aid commitments as well. Now, having tried and failed to provide a viable economic alternative to Chinese initiatives like BRI and RCEP, the United States' focus shifted to security-centered alliances like AUKUS and Quad. Although Quad is not touted as a pure security alliance, Quad and AUKUS are nevertheless manifestation of the competitive spirit of the Indo-Pacific vision. The ostensible objectives of Indo-Pacific strategy are to maintain a free and open Indo-Pacific, to build connections within and beyond the region, to drive prosperity, bolster security, and build collective resilience to transnational threats. Now, in its latest Indo-Pacific strategy document, the Biden administration has expanded on the concept, which has included security cooperation, climate cooperation, trade, investments, and even touting some kind of a free trade area. It's very interesting that out of the 18 pages of that document, Pakistan, which is a very important country, and it's a littoral country of Indian Ocean, and it's an ASEAN Regional Forum member. It is also a dialogue partner of ASEAN. It finds no mention in that, though we do not hanker for that kind of inclusion, but the Indo-Pacific strategy and its vision is clearly a flavor which is competitive and which is aimed at containment of rising global power. Its manifestations, first is Quad. Quad is a security dialogue. It started as a security dialogue between the United States, Australia, India, and Japan. It's a quasi-military alliance focused more towards non-military cooperation. However, aspirations for freedom of navigation at sea exhibit militaristic notions. It is not structured like a typical multilateral organization and does not provide for collective defense. Nonetheless, the conduct of the joint military exercise, Malabar, appeared to show unity and diplomatic cohesion. And India, which has joined hands with the United States, Israel, and the UAE in an arrangement known as the Quad of West Asia in the Middle East, is also ringing some kind of alarm bells with Pakistan. And these alliances are more aggressive unilateralism, which is aimed at exclusion, not inclusion. Now, another alliance, which is called the Anglo-Saxon Alliance, AUKUS, includes Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. It is an alliance which was done on September 15, 2021, in the shape of a trilateral security pact between Australia, UK, and the United States for the Indo-Pacific region. Under this pact, the United States and the UK would assist Australia in acquiring nuclear-powered submarines. It is being viewed and argued that the arrangement violates NPT Article 1, which prohibits nuclear weapon states from transferring or encouraging the development of nuclear weapons or other explosive devices by non-nuclear weapon states. Similarly, it's a violation of NPT Article 2, which restricts non-nuclear weapon states from seeking such assistance. Of late, there has been a consideration to let Japan join AUKUS and convert it into JAUKUS, but the idea, however, is still in its infancy. There's another alliance, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, which is a 13-member consortium proposed by the United States during President Biden's visit to Japan for the Quad leaders meeting in May 2022. It is aimed at investing in digital economy and resilient supply chain, clean energy infrastructure, and fair taxation and anti-corruption, aspects that were mentioned by one of our worthy speakers in this webinar as well. President Joe Biden discussed the idea during the first ever ASEAN Leaders Summit in Washington on May 12, 2022. The United States has proposed more than $200 billion in clean energy and infrastructure initiatives to ASEAN during the summit. It is an obvious counter to Chinese economic and investment initiatives in the region, but the scale and magnitude is too small compared to RCEP and Belt and Road Initiative. Now, I would frame some of the Pakistani concerns as to how it affects and impacts us. Pakistan's security concerns need to be assuaged by the alliance partners of Quad and AUKUS due to India's hostile attitude towards Pakistan. India continues to wage fifth-generation warfare against Pakistan, as evidenced by Brussels-based Disinfo Labs' exposure of Indian chronicles, where over 500 fake media sites were promoting anti-Pakistan propaganda in over 95 countries. The fake news was being disseminated through an Indian news agency, ANI, under the sponsorship of an Indian corporate entity, Srivastava Group. India is also sponsoring separatist militants in Balochistan and terrorist entities like Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, operating from border regions of Afghanistan. India continues to support the terrorist groups defeated and outlawed by Pakistan and has raised a special cell under its premier intelligence agency's headquarters, RAW, Research and Analysis Wing, to destabilize the CPAC through a force of 700 militants. Now, India's status as a net security provider in the Indo-Pacific region, with primary interests in Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea region, and secondary interests in the South China Sea and East China Sea, is being, this status is being cemented through bilateral Indo-US security alliances like Basic Cooperation Agreement and communication and information security arrangements like IPRI-CASA, and multilateral alliances with security flavors like Quad. According to Robert Kaplan, the United States, being a global hegemon in Western Hemisphere, is not ready to countenance a rival hegemon in Eastern Hemisphere. In this competitive fray, countries like Pakistan, who wish to depart from an erstwhile geopolitics-centered security paradigm, who wish to adopt a geo-economic-centered security paradigm now, leveraging their geographical location for trade, connectivity, and economic partnerships, feel justifiably threatened. Pakistan is wary of militarization of the maritime domain and nuclearization of the Indian and Pacific Oceans due to alliances like AUKUS. It is also wary of alliances like Quad due to their encouragement of regional hegemons like India, who continue to destabilize the conventional as well as nuclear deterrence in South Asia in pursuit of their geopolitical ambitions. The most seamy side of Indo-Pacific is the encouragement of India, wherein its positions get hardened and it refuses to enter into talks with Pakistan to resolve the intractable issues. So this is an aspect that's a perennial source of disharmony and friction in South Asia and a cause of concern from the security angle for Pakistan. Pakistan ideally would like to adopt a security model based upon economic security with stable and secure frontiers on eastern and western borders, in addition to a maritime domain facilitating trade and economic partnerships rather than militaristic maritime alliances that threaten freedom of navigation of rival nations. Pakistan hearkens for a global commons in the maritime domain that is peaceful and that privileges trade, connectivity, investments over containment. Pakistan also views with concern the statements by Indian Foreign Minister Mr. Jai Shankar that terms like Indo-Pacific legitimize the Indian strategic role as a net security provider in the Indian Ocean and South Asia. We would much rather prefer that there is a net security provider in the realm of economy, and there is economic integration of South Asia, which India is trying to stymie. Pakistan, in short, envisions Indian and Pacific Ocean maritime spaces as global commons and public goods for humanity that should not be sullied by the militaristic alliances that might start another Cold War in maritime domain. So this was my 2 cents, and I would like, and I'm very happy to answer any questions that either the participants or the observers would like to ask on the issue. So thank you very much. It's over to you, Hamza, for the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Brigadier Rashid, for your enlightening remarks. And I've just been informed that the Director General of CASA Asia Spain, Mr. Javier Porondo, has left for an important commitment. We thank you, sir, for your kind participation and your welcome remarks, which were very well received at our end. So we're going to go ahead with the second speaker from the Islamabad Policy Research Institute. He is Ambassador Retired Asif Durrani. He's a Senior Research Fellow at the Institute, and he will be speaking on the topic, the Indo-Pacific visions from Pakistan and through a foreign policy perspective or through a foreign policy lens. And his bio is as such that Ambassador Retired Asif Durrani joined the Foreign Service in 1986. He served at the headquarters as Section Officer 1988 to 89 and 1994 to 1995. He has held various diplomatic assignments in Pakistani missions, which include New Delhi 1990 to 94, Tehran 1998 to 2001, New York 2001 to 2004, Kabul 2005 to 2009, and London 2009 to 11. He was also Ambassador of Pakistan to the United Arab Emirates from 2014 to 2016, and Permanent Representative at International Renewable Energy Agency ARENA in Abu Dhabi. He has lectured in the Columbia University, Hofstra College, New York, IISS London, RUSI London, Chatham House London, and National Defense College in Kabul. He regularly appears on national and international electronic media as an analyst on regional issues, and he's also a regular contributor to newspapers as well. Ambassador Asif Durrani, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hamza. Thank you so much. And it's really a great pleasure listening to our friends from CASA Asia, and in fact, their views have been quite an enriching experience in understanding the European thinking about the Indo-Pacific Alliance. From Pakistan's perspective, the Indo-Pacific Alliance primarily focused on containing China in the region does not augur well for Asia as a whole and the world at large. The unipolarity, which has been the hallmark of American dominance after the fall of the former Soviet Union, has come under scrutiny. Multiple actors on the world stage, especially from the developing world, are suspicious of a renewed Cold War. Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, The process of launching the Indo-Pacific Alliance to contain China has gained momentum. Concurrently, major developing countries have expressed their opposition of being camp followers. Much to the chagrin of the US and Europeans, they abstained from the UNGA resolution condemning the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Significantly, ASEAN members are perturbed over the emerging tensions between the US and China. They are major US and China trading partners, fearing a negative backlash if tensions further engulf in the entire ASEAN region. India is also facing the same dilemma. It may have the US as the largest trading partner with 157 billion in trade, but China is also not lagging with $130 billion. After the Galwan Valley skirmishes in 2000, India imposed sanctions on a few dozen Chinese companies. Still, it had to withdraw within 6 months as the Indian businessmen were fast losing their businesses due to the ban. For Pakistan, many factors may be involved in adopting a neutral policy. Pakistan's immediate neighborhood is disturbed, its economy is in bad shape, while political instability is sapping Pakistan's diplomatic options. Pakistan's reality check takes me to 5 interlocking factors impacting its thinking on Indo-Pacific. First, geographically, Pakistan enjoys a unique position in South Asia, Central Asia, and Middle East, as it is situated at the confluence of these important resource-rich regions of Asia. Second, Pakistan has been a Western ally in most of its existence, from SEATO to CENTO to frontline state during the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, and lately as major non-NATO ally after 9/11. Third, in the neighborhood, Pakistan faces an undesirable situation. As mentioned by President IPRI, Ambassador Dr. Raza, Pakistan has perennial adversarial relations with India, an uneasy relationship with Afghanistan since its independence, and a problematic situation with Iran, not because of any bilateral dispute, but because of American sanctions, American and European sanctions, which by implication has put Pakistan in grave difficulties in conducting regular business with Iran. It's only China with which we have normal and cordial relations, and both countries have enjoyed a strategic partnership which has stood the test of time. Fourth, Pakistan was not consulted on the Indo-Pacific Alliance. The Indian commentators describe the geographical reach of the proposed partnership spanning from Wellington, New Zealand to Wagah, India, which means from where the Indian border ends and Pakistan's border begins. Therefore, Pakistan is excluded, India is happy, and the US is euphoric. Fifth, euphoric about India making its bid to contain China. And fifth, Pakistan's bad economic conditions would be negatively impacted if the situation between US and China further aggravates. With this premise, if I give Pakistan's view, then Pakistan has so far maintained that alliance politics has been harmful since the onset of the Cold War. Pakistan has learned the lesson of its association with the American-led alliances in the past, for which it had to pay a heavy price. Even after joining the war on terror after 9/11, Pakistan had to pay the highest price in blood and treasure. It lost 80,000 citizens and law enforcing agencies personnel and $150 billion in opportunity cost. Even while Pakistan was designated as a non-NATO ally, it faced economic downturn because of the travel advisories issued by the US and European allies. Doing business with Pakistan became expensive due to exorbitant insurance costs. As a result, Pakistan's exports stagnated during the past 2 decades. Ladies and gentlemen, more importantly, Pakistan cannot ignore the Indian factor, which may have a direct impact on its security and economic interests. Since India is one of the major partners in the Indo-Pacific alliance, it is using its strategic partnership with the US as a force multiplier to achieve greater power status. Such a situation directly threatens Pakistan's interests in the region and beyond. From the geostrategic perspective, 4 factors will contribute to strengthening the Indo-US strategic partnership. First, the United States' support for India's access to nuclear technology has increased India's strategic weight and has given it greater leverage in the region. India is now in a position to multiply its strategic assets and soon may be in a position to surpass China in terms of nuclear warheads. This has resulted in a more assertive foreign policy by India. In addition, the US has also provided India with advanced military equipment, which has further strengthened its military capabilities. From zero weapons sales in 2000, the US has supplied $20 billion worth of weapons and equipment to India till 2020. India may be contemplating replacing Russian weapons and equipment with those Americans. However, for all practical purposes, the bulk of Indian forces deployment can be seen along the Pakistani border. Second, the US and India signed a series of foundational agreements that include the Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Agreement, or LIMO, in August 2016. The Communications Compatibility Security Agreement, CASA, in September 2018, and the Basic Exchange Cooperation Agreement, BECA, signed in October 2020. According to provisions of LIMO, troops from the 2 countries can conduct joint exercises and visit each other's bases. This is far from when the 2 countries were on opposite ends of the divide during the Cold War. BECA will allow India and US to share military information, including advanced satellite and topographic data such as maps, nautical and aeronautical and geodetic, geophysical and geomagnetic and gravity data. CASA, meanwhile, allows the Indian military to function on high-end secured and encrypted communications equipment that are installed on American platforms obtained by Indian armed forces. Third, the US National Security Strategy, released in October last year, underlines the central role of India in Washington's competition with China in the Indo-Pacific. As the US focus shifts from Afghanistan to Indo-Pacific and from land wars to the maritime rivalry with China, India has become a far more significant partner for the US in recent years. Having defined China as the most consequential threat and the Indo-Pacific as the main competition arena, the US is stepping up its engagement with India. As per the National Security Strategy, as India is the world's largest democracy and a major defense partner, the United States and India will work together bilaterally and multilaterally to support our shared vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific. In the South Asian context, Pakistan is not mentioned in the National Security Strategy. Fourth, phenomenal growth in Indo-US economic relations has occurred during the last 2 decades. In 2021, overall US-India bilateral trade in goods and services reached a record $157 billion. The United States is India's largest trading partner and most important export market. Many US companies view India as a critical market and have expanded their operations there. Likewise, Indian companies seek to increase their presence in US markets, and at the end of 2020, Indian investment in the United States totaled $12.7 billion, supporting over 70,000 American jobs. The nearly 200,000 Indian students in the United States contribute $7.7 billion annually to the US economy. As regards the China factoring in Pakistan's geostrategic calculus, China is the only country where Pakistan enjoys cordial relations in the neighborhood. Given the volatility of its borders with India and Afghanistan, Pakistan cannot afford to open another front. Since Iran is under US sanctions, it has become difficult for Pakistan to do normal business with Iran. China-Pakistan relations are exceptional. Both are neighbors. They have different systems and sizes, but still have frictionless cooperation as China supports Pakistan's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and dignity. Pakistan and China are strategic, all-weather partners, and this partnership has stood the test of time. Because of an unfolding great power rivalry globally and in South Asia, Pakistan and China can help each other amidst the changing geopolitical scenario. China is enhancing its influence in Asia through cooperative means, including BRI. The CPEC, with a $62 billion Chinese investment, can serve as a game changer for Pakistan. Pakistan-China relations stand on their own as against the Pakistan-US relations. Finally, what are the choices for Pakistan? First, by default, Pakistan is now moving towards a regional policy which gives precedence to immediate neighbors or allies far afield. Given past experiences, Pakistani policymakers have started to learn that instead of bidding for international politics, a regional approach offers better guarantees for securing Pakistan's national interests. Second, for now, Pakistan may not have good relations with India. Still, with the geoeconomics approach that Pakistan intends to adopt, the two countries can evolve a way out to focus on their economies and, by extension, improve the security situation in the region. Third, Pakistan's region-first approach resonates in its policy on Afghanistan. Pakistan is now part of the consensus amongst the immediate neighbors of Afghanistan. The immediate neighbors of Afghanistan have decided to recognize the regime in Pakistan, in Kabul, simultaneously. This consensus is holding, which is a positive sign. In view of these, my explanations just now, I think the best course for Pakistan would be to stay neutral and focus on building its economy. I thank you for your patience. I would be too glad to answer any questions which may be concerning my presentation. I thank you. Over to you, Hamza.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Asad Durrani, for your words, and we completely agree with the Pakistani perspective, and it is now open to question and answers as well, and plenty of questions will also be coming your way as well. So as I mentioned, the Q&A session is now open. Kindly identify yourselves as well. We do have a few questions pouring in, so I'll start with them first. The first question is from Ambassador de Miguel from Rafael Bueno. And he says that, Ambassador de Miguel, you mentioned Latin America as a Pacific player. So how is this seen Latin America and the Indo-Pacific from Pakistan? And what role can Latin America as a continent play in that regard? Sir, if you could kindly unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Precisely, we don't know yet exactly which role Latin America could play. This is the fact that when drafting the EU strategy, but also when drafting other strategies, for whatever reason, nobody thought of Latin America. The experts meeting we will have later in October or November, it's something we want to start devising, which is the interest of Indo-Pacific for Latin America and vice versa. I can say some things, some areas I think it could be of interest for working together. One would be ocean governance, especially fighting against IUU fishing, something which is a problem for Ecuador, Peru, and Chile. Also, as the European Union wants to fight against protectionist trends, we have in our strategy an FTA FTA activities, negotiations are at the top of our strategy, I think there is a field where we should work with Latin America. Remember that several Latin American countries are members of the CPTPP. Also, many Latin American countries are members of APEC. I think this is another role to work. Something that we have in common with Latin America, we don't want to be sucked into rivalries. So this is another field where we could work with Latin America. During the Spanish presidency, our minister wants to focus a lot in working with Latin America. He's thinking more in the global perspective more than the specific Indo-Pacific one. But this is from CASA Asia, we want to add this other dimension of working from with Latin America from an Indo-Pacific perspective.
Thank you, His Excellency Emilio. So the question is also directed to the Pakistani participants as well, Ambassador Asif Durrani or Brigadier retired Dr. Rashid Wali Janjo. If you'd like to answer this question, that how is Latin America viewed, in the Asia Pacific from a Pakistani perspective? Ambassador Durrani, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. My short answer would be that in Pakistani scheme of things, Latin America, in fact, is not our cup of tea as far as the Indo-Pacific strategy is concerned. Primarily because our presence in Latin America is very thin. Hardly we have 2-3 missions in Latin America. But it would be, in fact, Spain is one of the major countries which has, because of the language and its past with the region, in fact, can enlighten us more, and they have done it. But it would be, but at the same time, we also note there are disquieting voices in Latin America, which are not happy with what is happening in the Indo-Pacific strategy, and the countries like Brazil, Argentina, and they don't want to align themselves with this India-China tensions. So I think our friend Ambassador Emilio de Miguel can throw more light on that because of the disquiet. And then what happened during the UN General Assembly elections, the voting pattern, condemning Russia, and these countries in fact abstained. So this is something, it is, one thing is very clear, because in this day and age, the countries' economies are interlinked, and they don't want to harm their economic interests. Even US and China would not want to harm their economic interests because they are the largest trading partner. So is China and Europe. So is India and China. So is China and ASEAN countries, and US and ASEAN countries. So this is creating a complex situation for the world. And in this regard, I think it also offers some window of opportunity to give diplomacy a chance. And I think multilateralism is the best forum where these issues can be addressed. Yes.
Thank you, Ambassador Asif Durrani. Brigadier Rashid, would you like to add anything? Guess we can't connect with Brigadier Rashid at this point in time. We will move on to the next question. And the next question is from our research associate here at the Islamabad Policy Research Institute. It is directed at Ms. Irene Martinez. China's role in South Asia and the backdrop of BRI and seaports is an opportunity for the least integrated region to grow economically. What are your views on China's role in the region?
Sorry, so China's role in the Indo-Pacific in the southeast part. Did I understand correctly?
Yes, ma'am, in South Asia, in the
Okay,
region.
South Asia in general. Okay, nothing in particular. Okay, so something interesting about China is that what we call today strategic hedging, right? This will be the position of China in regard to many, many issues, and also in actually in South Asia as well. So China tries to diversify as much as it can its partnerships with different countries and finds ways to maximize the relationship based on things of common interest, issues of common interest. So this way they can leave aside things that might not agree on, which is basically the case on South of Asia. South Asia is a region of Asia that is still, of course, booming, that there's a lot of interest. And China has also realized that there's interest from other parts of the world and also the Middle East, right? Middle Eastern countries are actually pivoting much more to East Asia. They're trying to embed their economy to South Asian economies. And for China, this could be an opportunity, but it could also be a threat for established relationships that it has in the region. So from my point of view, how I see Europeans' point of view on this, as long as there is economic development, there's knowledge transfer, and there's spillover effects to the local populations and anything related to economic activity, the European countries are very much in favor. But the problem is always regarding knowledge transfer, and specifically how any kind of economic activity impacts the local population, and if the local population is actually the one that benefits the most of these partnerships.
Thank you so much, Ms. Areen, for your comments, and I'm sure that our research associate, Ms. Amna Rafi, has been enlightened to a large extent. So the last question so far of the session, if there are any other questions, then kindly do pose it to me so that we can also go ahead with the with the closing remarks from the president later on. The last question of the session so far is for Brigadier Dr. Rashid Wali Janjua, and it is from our research associate, Ms. Amna Rafi. What political and strategic issues inform India-China competition in the Indo-Pacific region, according to you, sir?
Could you please repeat the question?
Yes, sir. The question is that what political and strategic issues inform India-China competition in the Indo-Pacific region, in your view?
What political and strategic issues inform India and
China competition in the Indo-Pacific region?
India and China, okay. You see, as was mentioned by Ambassador Durrani, India and China have a trade volume of 130 billion. So they are very closely connected economically. And India would ideally benefit from an economic alliance because of the geographical contiguity as well. It could be a win-win formulation for all if India found part of the BRI initiative of China and even RCEP. But unfortunately, the strategic incongruence between India and China stems from India's following the camp politics. So India squarely is pandering to the ideals of offshore balancing of United States, wherein India has been co-opted as a regional surrogate to contain China. So the differences are basically over domination of the Indian Ocean to a certain extent, it stems from the border conflict on Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh. Those are the irritants that have been continually bedeviled the relations between China and India. But economically, I think the basis, the string of bases that India views the China, which is gaining in Sri Lanka, Gwadar in case of Pakistan, Sitwe in case of Myanmar, and in Bangladesh. So India views those as a ring around itself and as a containment ring. So that is also one of the bones of contention between the two countries. But as I said, it all stems from a bigger global competition in which India is squarely trying to follow the United States camp, and the Indo-Pacific alliance and the strategic congruence between United States, India stems from a desire to contain China. And in Quad also, there are fears by countries like Japan about Taiwan Straits, and India also shares the same concerns in South China Sea, and also it shares the concerns because of Indian desire to dominate Indian Ocean. China is now a blue water navy. It's a domination of the global commons, and it is going from sea denial to actual sea control. So those kind of fears are there. Economically, I think if China and India, they view their relationship, it could multiply their trade volume manifold in the maritime domain as well. But these are some of the differences which I thought are between India and China on strategic and political plane.
Thank you so much, Brigadier Rashid, for answering this. Yes, thank you so much, Brigadier Rashid, for answering this question. Since we do not have any further questions so far, so I would like to bring the session to President of IPRI, Ambassador Dr. Raza Muhammad, for a vote of thanks. Sir, the floor is yours. Sir, if you could kindly unmute yourself.
Thank you for reminding. So I'm very grateful to all the speakers, panelists from Pakistani side and from also the Spanish side. Before I say anything, would Mr. Javier Parando like to say something?
Sir, I believe he is left.
Okay. Miss Irene, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Will you like to say something before I conclude?
Well, just thank you again for the opportunity. I think it's very important to keep doing these things, to compare visions and to learn from each other's perspective. I think this is the path for a better future for everyone. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I will like to be as brief as possible. What time is it in Spain? Okay.
Here it is midday 30.
Okay. Thank you. So it's not the time of siesta. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So I think what I conclude from the discussion or the panelists and from the discussion after the questions and question answers and from the talks what we heard, there is a positivity which is exuding from both the sides, from Pakistani side and from the Spanish side also. I think everyone realized, although in the term of international relations, realism drives the world, geosecurity, geopolitics does remain the driving forces, but at the same time, there is a realization of decoupling the war with human development or development for the human beings. I think I would say that Mr. Parando was very right in saying that EU has a separate strategy as far as the Indo-Pacific is concerned. And Indo-Pacific, keeping aside, EU would like to focus more on climate, connectivity, trade, humanitarian assistance is one area that can be added to. Similarly, Ambassador Emilio Di Miguel also spoke of multiple and host of initiatives. I think whatever is being done is done in a positive manner. And as far as Ms. Irene is concerned, I think it was very educative to listen to you, that you could decipher the countries in EU with different perspective on the Indo-Pacific vision and all that. So they have varying views and all that. And similarly, relationship with China, naturally, one is not clear. But I think one thing that drives the relationship of China with the European countries, Western countries, including the United States, the Indo-Pacific countries like Japan, Australia, even India, which is considered to be perhaps the most important rival of China, the complex interdependence is playing its role. And in the complex interdependence, both the countries or all the countries which are partnering with China in the trade and connectivity are still maintaining their relationships in the business and all that. You see, China and India had a war in Galawan, and it has been mentioned that after the war, their trade restarted and it has increased by 20 billion a year. And similarly, the trade of China continues with the United States of America, and United States of America and China remain one of the biggest partners in the trade and so on. So there is a hope that perhaps this could augur well. And two more things about the decoupling. Yes, some decoupling has taken place between United States and China, but EU and China and other partners, perhaps it is going to take time. But what I hear, what reverberates in the international arena, on the media, what I hear from France, what I hear from Germany, it is different. What I hear from Australia and even Japan and others, there are different views now. Everyone is not for war. I think people want to separate war from economy and human development, which is a very, very positive approach. That is what Pakistan is trying to do. That Pakistan's new national security policy shifts the focus from geosecurity to the economy. Few words about war in Ukraine. I think it is my personal view. You may agree with it or no, but I think EU is the biggest victim of this war. EU has become the battleground of this, so to say, proxy war, I would say, between United States and Russia. But major impact comes on EU, whether it is financial, whether it is the material loss, whether it is the human loss, or even the climatic degradation and the lingering losses. Even when the war ends, the lingering issues connected to this war will continue to worry EU. And as one of the speakers very ably said, it will be good if they could end this war amicably and resolve all these issues. With this, I once again thank you all for your candid views, for your very valuable views, for your very learned views. And I would suggest and request that we should continue with this interaction. Back to you, my dearest friends from Spain, if you still want to say anything, and then to Hamza. God be with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hamza.
Yes, to the Spanish speakers, as the ambassador rightly said, if you have any further comments that you would like to share, you please go ahead.
Well, I would like to mention that I have liked it very much. I value very much this meeting, this webinar we have had, because I think that till now we have missed more contact and more dialogue between us. And I would like to continue with this dialogue in the future, maybe even in a personal format. I think webinars are very well, but cannot replace completely the human touch. Thank you to everybody who made this webinar possible. Thank you.
Very grateful, and I agree with the human touch, physical, personal interaction. That pays more. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Dr. Raza Mohammed and His Excellency Mr. Emilio. So that brings us to the end of today's webinar. Thank you all for your participation. And this is actually the first joint webinar between CASA Asia Spain and the Islamabad Policy Research Institute. For all of you who have tuned in, we are very grateful. You may follow us on our social media pages for the latest updates. It's goodbye for now.
Bye, goodbye.